Welcome back to Bloomsday, and we have arrived in Ithaca. In the Odyssey, books 17 to 20 relate Odysseus' confrontation with, and indeed slaughter of, the suitors who had taken over his palace. Odysseus enters the palace disguised as a beggar. But in this episode of Ulysses, Leopold Bloom and Stephen Dedalus have finally come together into Bloom's home. Bloom and Stephen have walked to Eccles Street, talking as they go. Bloom has forgotten his keys, so he climbs over the back railings and admits Stephen through the hall door. The chapter is written very, very interestingly as an interrogation, with the narrator responding to questions from an interlocutor. And reading Ithaca, we have Hazel Leroy and Zoe Abuyuan.
What parallel courses did Bloom and Stephen follow returning?
Starting united, both at normal walking pace from Beresford Place, they followed in the order named Lower and Middle Gardner Street and Montjoy Square West. Then, at reduced pace, each bearing left, Gardner's Place, by an inadvertence as far as the farther corner of Temple Street. Then, at reduced pace with interruptions of halt, bearing right, Temple Street North as far as Hardwick Place. Approaching Disparate at relaxed walking pace, they crossed both the Circus before George's Church diametrically, the chord in any circle being less than the arc which it subtends.
Of what did the duumvirate deliberate during their itinerary?
Music, literature, Ireland, Dublin, Paris, friendship, woman, prostitution, diet, the influence of gaslight or the light of arc and glow lamps on the growth of adjoining para-heliotropic trees, exposed corporation emergency dust buckets, the Roman Catholic Church, ecclesiastical celibacy, the Irish nation, Jesuit education, careers, the study of medicine, the past day, the maleficent influence of the pre-Sabbath, Stephen's collapse.
Did Bloom discover common factors of similarity between their respective like and unlike reactions to experience?
Both were sensitive to artistic impressions, musical in preference to plastic or pictorial. Both preferred a continental to an insular manner of life, a cisatlantic to a transatlantic place of residence. Both, indurated by early domestic training and an inherited tenacity of heterodox resistance, profess their disbelief in many orthodox religious, national, social, and ethical doctrines. Both admitted the alternately stimulating and obtunding influence of heterosexual magnetism.
What act did Bloom make on their arrival at their destination?
At the house steps of the fourth of the equidifferent uneven numbers, number 7 Eccles Street, he inserted his hand mechanically into the back pocket of his trousers to obtain his house key.
Was it there?
It was in the corresponding pocket of the trousers which he had worn on the day but one preceding.
Why was he doubly irritated?
Because he had forgotten, and because he remembered that he had reminded himself twice not to forget.
What were then the alternatives before the premeditatedly, respectively, and inadvertently keyless couple?
To enter or not to enter, to knock or not to knock.
Bloom's decision?
A stratagem. Resting his feet on the dwarf wall, he climbed over the area railings, compressed his hat on his head, grasped 2 points at the lower union of rails and stiles, lowered his body gradually by its length of 5 feet 9 inches and a half to within 2 feet 10 inches of the area pavement, and allowed his body to move freely in space by separating himself from the railings and crouching in preparation for the impact of the fall.
Did he fall?
By his body's known weight of 11 stone and 4 pounds and of Avoirdupois measure, as certified by the graduated machine for periodical self-weighing in the premises of Francis Frodman, pharmaceutical chemist of 19 Frederick Street North. On the last feast day of the Ascension, to wit, the 12th day of May of the bisextile year, 1904 of the Christian era, Jewish era, 5664, Mohammedan era, 1322, golden number 5, epoch 13, solar cycle 9, Dominical letter CB, Roman indiction 2, Julian period 6617, MCMIV.
Did he rise uninjured from concussion?
Regaining new stable equilibrium, he rose, uninjured though concussed by the impact, raised the latch of the area door by exertion of force at its freely moving flange, and by leverage of the first kind applied at its fulcrum, gained retarded access to the kitchen through the subadjacent scullery, ignited a lucifer match by friction, set free inflammable coal gas by turning on the vent cock, lit a high flame, which, by regulating, he reduced to quiescent candescence, and lit finally a portable candle.
What discrete succession of images did Stephen meanwhile perceive?
Reclined against the area railings, he perceived through the transparent kitchen panes a man regulating a gas flame of 14 CP, a man lighting a candle of 1 CP, a man removing in turn each of his 2 boots, a man leaving the kitchen with a candle.
Did the man reappear elsewhere?
After a lapse of 4 minutes, the glimmer of his candle was discernible through the semi-transparent, semicircular glass fan light over the hall door. The hall door turned gradually on its hinges. In the open space of the doorway, the man reappeared, without his hat, with his candle.
Did Stephen obey his sign?
Yes. Entering softly, he helped to close and chain the door, and followed softly along the hallway the man's back and listed feet and lighted candle, past a lighted crevice of doorway on the left, and carefully down a turning staircase of more than 5 steps into the kitchen of Bloom's house.
What did Bloom do?
He extinguished the candle by a sharp expiration of breath upon its flame, drew 2 spoon-seat deal chairs to the hearthstone, one for Stephen with its back to the area window, the other for himself when necessary, knelt on one knee, composed in the grate a pyre of cross-laid resin-tipped sticks and various colored papers in irregular polygons of best Abram coal at 21 shillings a ton from the yard of Messrs. Flower and MacDonald of 14 Delir Street, kindled it at 3 projecting points of paper with one lighted lucifer match, thereby releasing the potential energy contained in the fuel, allowing its carbon and hydrogen elements to enter into free union with the oxygen of the air.
Of what similar apparitions did Stephen think?
Of others elsewhere, at other times, who kneeling on one knee or on two had kindled fires for him. Of Brother Michael in the infirmary of the College of the Society of Jesus at Clongowes Wood, Seylands, in the county of Kildare. Of his father, Simon Dedalus, in an unfurnished room of his first residence in Dublin, number 13 Fitzgibbon Street. Of his godmother, Miss Kate Morkan, in the house of her dying sister, Miss Julia Morkan, at 15 Usher's Island. Of his Aunt Sarah, wife of Richard Goulding, in the kitchen of their lodgings at 62 Clanbrassil Street. Of his mother Mary, wife of Simon Dedalus, in the kitchen of number 12 North Richmond Street, on the morning of the feast of St. Francis Xavier, 1898. Of the Dean of Studies, Father Butt, in the Physics Theatre of University College, 16 Stevens Green North. Of his sister Delia, in his father's house in Cabra.
What did Stephen see on raising his gaze to the height of a yard from the fire towards the opposite wall?
Under a row of 5 coiled spring house bells, a curvilinear rope stretched between 2 holdfast athwart across the recess beside the chimney pier, from which hung 4 small-sized handkerchiefs folded unattached consecutively in adjacent rectangles. 1 pair of ladies' gray hose with Leal suspender tops and feet in their habitual position, clamped by 3 erect wooden pegs, 2 at their outer extremities and the 3rd at their point of junction.
What did Bloom see on the range?
On the right, smaller hob, a blue enameled saucepan. On the left, larger hob, a black iron kettle.
What did Bloom do at the range?
He removed the saucepan to the left hob, rose and carried the iron kettle to the sink in order to tap the current by turning the faucet to let it flow.
Did it flow?
Yes. From Roundwood Reservoir in County Wicklow of a cubic capacity of 2,400 million gallons, percolating through a subterranean aqueduct of filter mains of single and double pipage, constructed at an initial cost of £5 per linear yard, by the way of the Dargle, Rathdown, Glen of the Downs, and Callowhill, to the 26-acre reservoir at Stillorgan, a distance of 22 statute miles, and thence through a system of relieving tanks by a gradient of 250 feet to the city boundary at Eustace Bridge, Upper Leeson Street. Although from prolonged summer drought and daily supply of 12.5 million gallons, the water had fallen below the sill of the overflow weir, for which reason the borough surveyor and waterworks engineer, Mr. Spencer Hardy, C.E., on the instructions of the Waterworks Committee, had prohibited the use of municipal water for purposes other than those of consumption, envisaging the possibility of recourse being had to the impotable water of the Grand and Royal Canals, as in 1893. And particularly as the South Dublin Guardians, notwithstanding their ration of 15 gallons per day per pauper supplied through a 6-inch meter, had been convicted of a wastage of 20,000 gallons per night by a reading of their meter on the affirmation of the law agent of the corporation, Mr. Ignatius Rice, solicitor, thereby acting to the detriment of another section of the public, self-supporting taxpayers, solvent, sound.
What in the water did Bloom, water lover, drawer of water, water carrier, returning to the range, admire?
Its universality, its democratic equality and constancy to its nature in seeking its own level, its vastness in the ocean of Mercator's projection, its unplumbed profundity in the Sundom Trench of the Pacific exceeding 8,000 fathoms, the restlessness of its waves and surface particles visiting in turn all points of its seaboard, the independence of its units, the variability of states of sea, its hydrostatic quiescence in calm, its hydrokinetic turgidity in neap and spring tides, its subsidence after devastation, its sterility in the circumpolar ice caps, Arctic and Antarctic, its climatic and commercial significance, its preponderance of 3-to-1 over the dry land of the globe, its indisputable hegemony extending in square leagues over all the region below the subequatorial Tropic of Capricorn, the multi-secular stability of its primeval basin, its luteal fulvous bed, its capacity to dissolve and hold in solution all soluble substances, including millions of tons of the most precious metals, its slow erosions of peninsulas and islands, its persistent formation of homeothetic islands, peninsulas, and downward trending promontories, its alluvial deposits, its weight and volume and density, its imperturbability in lagoons and highland tarns, its gradation of colors in the torrid and temperate and frigid zones, its vehicular ramifications in continental lake-contained streams and confluent ocean-flowing rivers with their tributaries and transoceanic currents, Gulf Stream, north and south equatorial courses. Its violence in seaquakes, waterspouts, artesian wells, eruptions, torrents, eddies, freshets, spates, groundswells, watersheds, water partings, geysers, cataracts, whirlpools, maelstroms, inundations, deluges, cloudbursts. Its vast circumterrestrial ahorizontal curve. Its secrecy in springs and latent humidity revealed by rhamdomantic and hygrometric instruments and exemplified by the well by the hole in the wall at Ashton Gate, saturation of air, distillation of dew. The simplicity of its composition, 2 constituent parts of hydrogen with 1 constituent part of oxygen. Its healing virtues, its buoyancy in the waters of the Dead Sea, its persevering penetrativeness in runnels, gullies, inadequate dams, leaks on shipboard, its properties for cleansing, quenching thirst and fire, nourishing vegetation, its infallibility as paradigm and paragon, its metamorphoses as vapor, mist, cloud, rain, sleet, snow, hail, its strength in rigid hydrates, its variety of forms in lofts and bays and gulfs and bights and guts and lagoons and atolls and archipelagos and sounds and fjords and menses and tidal estuaries and arms of sea. Its solidity in glaciers, icebergs, ice flows. Its docility in working hydraulic mill wheels, turbines, dynamos, electric power stations, bleach works, tanneries, Scotch mills. Its utility in canals, rivers, if navigable, floating and graving docks. Its potentiality, derivable from harnessed tides or watercourses falling from level to level. Its submarine fauna and flora, an acoustic photophobe, numerically, if not literally, the inhabitants of the globe. Its ubiquity as constituting 90% of the human body. The noxiousness of its effluvia in lacustrine marshes, pestilential fens, faded flower water, stagnant pools in the waning moon.
Having set the half-filled kettle on the now burning coals, why did he return to the still-flowing tap?
To wash his soiled hands with a partially consumed tablet of Barrington's lemon-flavored soap, to which paper still adhered, bought 13 hours previously for 4d, and still unpaid for. Thank you.